Hello, everybody. I'm very happy today to be with Stefan Van Doorslaer, who is the CEO of Ahlers. And I think many people will know Stefan and myself, Danny Thorniley, of the DT Global Business. We're doing a series over a couple of years of conversations with VIPs, important people in the group who can share their knowledge and wisdom and experience with everybody. And Stefan has a lot of that. And also Stefan works very importantly, as he's going to explain to us, in the logistics and supply chain. It was always an important topic, but I think we'll all agree for the last 2-3 years and for the future, it's a critical important topic. So Stefan, very nice to have you here today. First questions is really about you. So who are you and how did you get here?
Thanks, Danny, for the introduction to be a VIP. It's already an honor then to be here. I'm Belgian. I'm born Belgium. I'm an engineer. And I moved in 2008 to Russia to work for a Belgian company, a logistics company. It was the idea to stay 2 years in Russia to be responsible for the Russian organization. But after 2 years, I had the option to go back to Europe or to stay in Russia, and I decided to stay. What is the main reason? I think a lot of opportunities, a market which was growing, a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, it's also interesting. And you have, you love it or you hate it. And it seems that I loved it. So I decided to stay in Russia to work for the same company. I was general manager for Russia, then I became the manager for CIS, a bit wider region. I had some other functions, and since 2019 I'm the CEO of the group, the worldwide group, but I'm still based in Russia because from our business more than 50% is generated in Russia. So even the headquarters is in Antwerp, Belgium. I'm still based in Russia and normally traveling quite often up and down, but since COVID is of course a bit less and less easy today also to go to Europe and back to Russia.
Great, thanks a lot. That's I think I knew a lot of that. I also know a lot about Ahlers. Can you just give us, Ahlers, who they are and what they are?
So it's a Belgian family company. I think it's quite important. The owner, my boss, is Mr. Leijzen, and his mother is Mrs. Ahlers. So it's still the family who started in 1908, who are still owning the business. We are a logistics company. We are, for example, in Russia since '93. We are also active in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, the Baltics, China, Eastern Europe, and in Europe. A logistics company, meaning we do warehousing, we do custom brokerage, we do forwarding, but our tagline is also solutions beyond logistics. And what does it mean? It can be the region. We are very active in this region for a very long time, which 30 years ago was maybe not so easy. Today it's maybe easier. But also we are very strong in transportation of theft sensitive goods. So you have guys with Kalashnikovs in the trucks, or we have special systems we developed ourselves on the trucks. We do trade facilitation, so we do a bit more than the standard logistics, but let's call it today we are a logistics company.
I didn't know about the high value protection and Kalashnikovs, so yes. Interesting. Great. Stefan, globally, I did a global webinar this morning by coincidence. And of course, I was looking at Russia, Ukraine, the tragedy there, talking about China, the dynamics there, both the economy, politics, Taiwan, United States as a background noise, which could get worse as time goes on. And as you said, we're in very challenging times. With COVID, especially globally and pan-European, supply chain and logistics really transformed. And, a lot of manufacturing companies were used to, let's say, attractive fees, and the fee structure changed with supply and demand. So can you just give us a quick summary of, how Ahlers and you see that, you talked about China and Europe and everything. Before we go into Russia, Central Europe, the big picture of what are the big drivers for your customers and yourselves?
Many questions in one question. I think it's important to understand that logistic doesn't drive the business, it follows. And we are always supporting the business. We can have an impact on the business. So you have globalization, deglobalization, localization, and of course we need to follow. And depending on the logistics, and I think it became very clear with COVID, the disruption, that logistics is quite important, and it became visible, the importance. Today, everybody is using e-commerce, so they are now really in touch with logistics. I think we had 1 year ago, 2 years ago, the Suez Canal, who was blocked, and you see even a blockage of a few days, the impact on the supply chain. So logistics is a very important activity in the whole business world, but still we are a follower. I call it a follower. And depending on what is the trend, and like you said, things are moving maybe to Asia instead of Europe, or there is a deglobalization, you always need logistics. So I'm very happy to work in logistics, but it doesn't mean that you still have business, because maybe when you are a global player focusing on sea freight or on global supply chains, but everything becomes local, you lose maybe some of your business. Or when you have nothing to do with e-commerce and everything is going to e-commerce, you lose business or you gain business. So I think for me, logistics, it's quite visible today. It's important, and it will remain important. And let me explain a few examples. Today, CO2 sustainability, it's on the agenda of many companies, maybe less in CIS, but in other companies or in other countries. But you still need to transport the goods. Okay, maybe you don't use a road freight, you're going to use waterways or railway, but still you need the logistics. I remember also a few years ago when 3D printing became hot. It was a hype. Today you don't hear so much about it, but that moment they said, oh, we don't need logistics anymore for spare parts. But then the question is, for example, spare parts, if you go to print them, you send a file, like a Word document, but you want them to print it one time, but how are you going to control? You're going to print it only one time and not 5 times and sell it to somebody else, the other 4 parts. And if you print a spare part and you put it in a car, and after the car is broke, who's responsible? The file, the guy who created the file, or the printing? So a lot of time you see challenges, trends, hypes, but at the end, you still need a container on a vessel to go from A to B. You still need a truck on the road. So for me, again, there is a lot of shift in logistics, which means you need new capabilities, new competences, and you need to make sure you're agile to follow it. But that's something will not change. And like you said, Asia, we see now today with the sanctions, of course, there is a big shift of goods which are sanctioned, we still can buy them legally in Asia. I still have customers because our customers are Western companies. So we work for Western companies in CIS, let's call it CIS. And even I have customers which are important, not sanctioned goods, who are already changing their supply chain to Asia. Because we want to be sure, even in future, if there is new sanctions coming, we want to be sure, or they are splitting their supply chain to Europe, to Asia. So I think today, winner in the logistics and in the supply chain is Asia. And if you are there present, of course, that's good for you. So, and the only thing at the end, which has a big impact on logistics is a customer. I mean, is a consumer. And I think, for example, in Russia, it's a very consumer-driven market. And you know, we have a lot of members from the FMCG. I'm not sure what next year will be because purchasing power is going down. So at the end, logistics is really a follower and mostly the consumer behavior.
I'm curious, Stefan, about that. I understand what you said about the shift to Asia. Now, my counter question to you now, and you know this from your experience and operating in China, we've got the tensions with Taiwan, which I won't overplay, but certainly some global boards I've been speaking with, and in EMEA and Eurasia bosses, they're getting a little bit, not panicky about China, but more concerned. And you've made a very good point, you know, more people have gone to Asia. We're getting Asianification in Eurasia. Now, how do you and Ahlers see are you seeing anybody slowing supply chains in China? I don't think I'm seeing people pull out, but are you seeing any hesitancy?
Yeah, I think 2 points. I don't make any predictions anymore since a few months. Even you remember, I still remember the webinars or the offline events many years ago, and the predictions about the next female president in US. But it wasn't a female president at the end. So the prediction for me and about China, Taiwan, I don't know, but I noticed that, and again, I talk about our customers, they're moving to Vietnam, for example. And I think it's not just because of the possible conflict, but also the cost price.
Yeah.
I think China is becoming expensive. And for some, let's say, cheaper goods, consumer goods, commodities, they go to other countries in Asia. So it's like Africa. I know Africa, I think it's 54 countries. So what is Africa? What is Asia? And I think China, of course, is a major player, but also India. India is a lot of commodities are coming from India. So there are many options, let's call it.
Indeed. By the way, on that China point you make, Stefan, one of the group members said, you know, competition coming into China, products, actual manufacturers and so on. But, you know, historically, we've taken the view, oh, the Chinese come somewhere with cheap products and aggressive competition. Now, the comment was, well, they're coming in with maybe, you know, inferior products, but higher prices. So at all levels, it seems maybe the Chinese are doing that. Yeah. But that can bring us nicely into, you know, our big baby that, you know, you've been there a long time and I have too, Russia and what's been going on. You've heard me talk about the number of the companies who are leaving and downsizing, and just for our framework for this conversation amongst our group, and I think across all sectors, you know, about 25% of companies are leaving or downsizing effectively. In pharmaceutical, it's a lot less, you know, 5%. And in IT and technology, it's a lot more, as high as 60%, in my view, just anecdotes and surveys. So how was your first reaction to February the 25th and the first few months? And then my second question is, how is it changing now? Is it settling, or is it becoming something different?
Yeah, my first reaction, of course, was shock, knowing that we have 120 people in Ukraine working in Kremenchuk and Kharkov, which maybe were cities not known before, but since a few months they are very famous in not the best way. So it was about people, about what's happening with the people, how are they, and secondly, of course, business. If you know that more than 50% of our business is Russia and 10% is Ukraine, so we were worried about what to do. We thought, and I think many thought, okay, it's a short-term thing. We made scenarios, and it was like 3 months, things will go down, but then it will go up again, step by step. And the reaction was from our side, we will lose business because customers will leave the market or put things on hold, or because of the exchange rate at that moment, it was very expensive to import at that moment. Volumes will go down. So we did some reduction exercise. And what we see today, and again, that's the difference between a global player and a local player. A global player in logistics, you know, they are very easy to make decisions. We cut here, we put there, we move from left to right. Well, we are a local, a regional hero, let's call it. It's very close to our customers, very close to our employees, and we decided to stay. But as a result today, that our volumes goes up, not because our customers, some of the ones who are staying, they are building up volume because they want to be independent from what's happening. So they are building up volume, but also competitors are leaving. So they reach out to us, and we stopped our marketing activities around Russia, around Ukraine and things, but still they find us. So we have, let's say, more volumes. Quite difficult, and maybe later we will come back a bit to how to do logistics today to Russia. So very complicated activities, higher margins. Yes, like you said, higher margins, of course. We are here to stay. We are here to stay on the long term. We are here since '93, so we had the ruble crisis, we had the financial crisis. We survived all of this. We are from origin. The owner is a German who started in Belgium. So we had some 2 world wars. We also survived. So we are survivor, and we are sure we also survive this crisis together with our team.
Great. No, thank you for that. And, you know, several of the group members in manufacturing, our clients, they've said, you know, they've survived quite well for the March, April, May, June period. As you were implying before, there is concern about consumer spending, household spending, and so on. You've heard me say the ruble is very strong, maybe artificially, but I don't see it collapse. I see it coming down slowly, steadily, but I don't see a ruble collapse in the next 18 months or so, not even after that, but just steady decline. So there's an operational environment there. Talking with the group members, you know, receivables are good, payments are possible, but a challenge for some. But really, and as you know, in our survey, I think it's a good summary to start our conversation, Stefan, on supply chain logistics Russia. 30% say supply chain in Russia is quite easy. Good luck. 30% say it's doable and very challenging. And 30% say it's almost impossible. With anecdotes, I actually get more anecdotes on the challenging side. But, you know, it's a real mix. I would say, and also with localization and inventories, as you said, definitely some companies are building up. So when you hear that kind of thing, 30%, 30%, 30%, how do you see that, and what's the response of Ahlers to that?
I think the 30% who said it's quite easy, I'm a bit surprised. Maybe
me too.
Maybe domestic, of course, transportation within Russia. It's quite easy because a lot of companies, Russian companies who were doing international transportation are now doing only domestic because they cannot go to trucks outside Russia. So let's say domestic transport, yes, it's quite easy. International, it's another story. And there you have different, again, to give an example, we have one of our customers, a big multinational company. They have in average 2 months stock in Russia for production. And they decided, I think 3 months ago, to build up 12 months stock. So they were going to really build up the stock in Russia. I had a meeting with them this week. Today they have 1 month stock. They have less stock because they don't get the products here. Yeah? And we're working for them. Solutions, transportation from Europe, trucks are very difficult. You can go via Belarus, you can change the trucks at the border. There are solutions, but less and less trucking companies are willing to do this. For example, we have trucks from Poland to Ukraine. They are waiting 10 days at the border. So they are saying, guys, you know, I have other work in Europe, because even today Europe is an overheated market in transport. So you're saying, guys, I'm not going to wait 10 days at the border. I will do other business. So it's possible, but you need to find them. Railway, still a good possibility. Move goods via rail. There are a few shipping lines still going to Russia, but it's very limited, not reliable, because you don't know, will they go, what time will they go, when will they go? Okay, there are alternative routes via Turkey, via Central Asia, but it's not the cheapest and not the shortest one. Air deliveries, I think since 3 months, we do 1 or 2 complete airplanes with goods going from Japan, going from Central Asia to Russia, to Poland, to Ukraine. So yes, everything is possible, but the 30% easy thing, I think, is domestic, because at least not our customers are coming with easy questions.
I was surprised at that number myself, and it may change in our next survey. I think the couple of sectors where I'm hearing anecdotally it's getting tougher is financing. Fewer banks are willing to do activity. Like you said, they're not sanctioned, but they're saying we don't want to do it. And then also supply chain. The way I see it from the stories was very, very difficult, March, April. For some, it got a little better. And now I'm saying it's stabilizing or getting a bit worse would be how I see it. But there are different dynamics. Stefan, before the 25th of February, you were looking at different approaches to the market. What are your clients, asking, I can imagine, what's their demands and requirements of you? And second related question is digital. It was all part of all our plans. Is that a solution? Is it still very exciting or a bit more normal?
Yeah, I think to come back to the previous question on finance, I think you had a podcast recently with Ulf Schneider from Schneider Group. I think he also explained a lot of things are still possible in the legal way, but you need to know how to do it. In the beginning, the banks in Europe blocked everything. Now they start to say, okay, guys, they have a compliance rule, but the compliance now, they know more and more the details. They are allowing more and more things again. So things start to normalize. Like you said, the first month was terrible, but now things start to normalize, but still not easy. And as our customers to look at what is there, trend. Digitalization for me, what I noticed with COVID, we are a company and our DNA is customer intimacy, and really something which is really in our DNA. So every customer knows how to reach us, and you don't get a phone call with a number and you need to dial and then say first option 1, then option 2, then 3. And you notice with COVID, a lot of people are available and we could talk to the customer. And if you talk about data, for now, for the first time, and it's also normally it's the summertime, we do a 6+6. And the last 6 months, actual figures, what is the forecast for the next 6 months? Now, for the first time, we do a 6+18. Because we don't know what will, we have a lot of questions about next year, inflation, and maybe we can talk about inflation, the labor market, what will be next year. And if you look at customers, digitalization, I think every of your member, they can, in 2 minutes, they can get to their figures, exactly the revenues, the controllable EBIT, gross margin. But if you ask, what about logistics? How many volumes you do, how many transport, how many containers. And if you talk to our customers, we talk with the logistics department, they have the data available, but they don't know how to reach it. And if they reach it, how to present it. And even with a very easy tool like Power BI, I'm also not a specialist, but you can visualize what they have. And normally within a company, and I'm generalizing maybe, but within a company, a lot of data is managed, is financial data and not operational data. And the last even years, we start to visualize operational data, logistics data. And okay, in the next step, you can start to analyze it and to optimize, and we see, to give an example in logistics, customers comes to us and today, container rates are crazy, and some companies are getting very rich, and it's good for them, and I'm happy for them. And then you start discussing with the customer, and you get the data, and then you see that they are discussing, okay, especially in the past when the price was lower, the container cost €1,000 to transport or 970. And now in this 30 euro is discussion. But if you get the data, they spend on every container €300. They call it demurrage. The container was waiting before the ship was loaded, or when the ship is unloaded, the container is not picked up. So you need to pay penalties to the shipping line. So we said, okay, let's work on this 300 euro. Don't discuss the 30 euro rate you can decrease, but how can you avoid penalties? Because in the past, shipping lines, as far as I know, they were making the money with this extra cost.
Right.
Because today they make money just with the transport, and I think that's about data. And people talk about big data and analyzing data, and just visualize them and see where you can work on it. And I think especially for logistics in a company is normally not so important. So they don't put the resources on it. And I think we have a department who's only doing this. And I think the value is increasing, even with disruption. Borders are closed. So I think for me, the digitalization, yes, there is digitalization, but it's more about transparency, more about visualization today.
Thank you very much. I've got some more points, and I think, I'd like to talk about how you see inflation, give my view. But first, you talked about CIS, and obviously, companies are doing that, staying in Russia or not. Even those who are staying are refocusing some more attention on Central Europe, Middle East. But I'm seeing, and I'm sure you are, many of the group, actually one pharma client, I'm talking with them on Monday. I was expecting to do a Russia business presentation with them. They said, Danny, please, Russia half, and the other half, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and the Caucasus, please. So I'll be doing that. Now, that's just one example. Another consumer product company said, Danny, I was talking with the managing director on the web, on the phone, and I said, Irina, I notice you're in the car. And she said, yes, I hope the connection's good. I said, it's fine. I said, well, where are you driving? In Moscow? And she said, I'm in Kazakhstan. And she says, I spend half my time in Kazakhstan and half in Russia. So are you, companies are looking at doing more there, trying to manufacture more, supply chains. We knew before the geography, Central Asia as China over here and Turkey over there and Russia up there. Is it becoming really very dynamic and changing, or only a little bit yet?
I think a little bit depending on the customer. We have international brands, quite many of them are premium brands, and the purchasing power in Central Asia is still quite low. There are a lot of people, but they cannot buy expensive coffee or expensive kitchen equipment. So you see this kind of customer working for them in Russia. We don't have the opportunity or the same volumes in Central Asia.
Absolutely.
But we still work, for example, tobacco companies. We see that tobacco companies are moving to Uzbekistan production or increasing the production in Kazakhstan. Of course, they are now, they don't have, some of them are still producing Ukraine, but some of them are hit and they cannot produce anymore. So that we see a shift. I was believing Uzbekistan, I think 5-6 years ago when there was a new president, when they accepted currency, I thought it's going to open a big market, but it didn't come out as expected. Then with the customs union, we said, oh, let's open some warehouses in Kazakhstan and we can supply the south of Russia from Kazakhstan. It's much easier as from Moscow or from Petersburg, but it didn't make this step. And now, of course, you see a big shift in the trade via Kazakhstan coming from China to Russia. But okay, then it's a transit. And transit, you don't earn money with transit, not a lot. So it's a big market, but for us, we see a shift, but we don't see the huge shift.
That's great, Stefan. Thank you very much. I'd go along with that. And some of the service companies are, moving their offices there and this kind of thing. One or two of our consumer product companies have as much as 10, 12, 14% of Soviet volume in the stands and in the Caucasus, which is very high. But overall, you've heard me say over the years, and it didn't change much. for manufacturing companies, Russia was, maybe is, 85, 92% of volume of business. And, you know, Ukraine and the stands in the Caucasus was 10, 12, 15. Ukraine's out of the picture. So I think the stands in Caucasus even now probably represent 5, 7, 8% of total Soviet revenues. So yeah, I think I endorse our clients who do that. Obviously, you need to diversify, look at new opportunities. But, you know, no, Central Asia, Caucasus is not a solution for any lost business in Russia. It's a nice help. Good, agreed. Knowing your company a little bit, well, more than that, but the automotive sector in Russia and globally anywhere, they need a lot of spare parts and components and so on. A couple of Western players have left the market. And several, a big handful of big companies with big investments are wait and see. I can't name a company, but there's one of my group members, I was in London with the CEO, and he said, I met him in March in the board, and he said in March that you know, they need 3,000 components to build a car, which is pretty average. And he said, Danny, in March, 70 of our components were sanctioned. And then when I met him online in May, he said, Danny, it's not 70, it's 700 now. So I'm just wondering, for the automotive sector, from what you know from your experience, Stefan, what are the dynamics there? Is it very much suspended, slow, or the Russian companies are stepping in? And how do you see the outlook?
Yeah, I think it's a very challenging market, and I think for the automotive sector, I think they have very tough times behind them and also ahead of them for many years already. And what we see, we work a lot with spare parts because customs clearance is quite a challenge, and it's one of our strengths. And one of our customers, for example, they have their global spare parts center in Belgium, where they collect all the spare parts from all over the world, and from there they send out to all their customers worldwide, including Russia. But the majority of their spare parts comes from China. They have the Chinese producers. And today, sending the spare parts from Europe to Russia, they're not sanctioned, but they're dual use. So it's very complicated, you know, documentation. While they said, oh, we have the spare parts produced in China, but we don't know how to manage. And to give an example about today, our role is a bit different, is that our Chinese logistics company are procuring for them the spare parts in China. So, and we put everything in a hub, put it together, put it in a container, all different spare parts from different suppliers, and then we sell the one container with all the spare parts to their entity in Russia. So it means they said, look, from a Russian point of view, I only have one customer in China, which is Ahlers. And we pay for the spare parts and the services and everything. And in China, yourself, you have a legal entity, so you know how to do the invoicing, you know how to do the accounting, and you do then the procurement. You don't do the negotiation of the prices, you don't do the quality, because we have this system in place. But instead of the company who's buying in Belgium from China, they're still doing this, but for the Russian volumes, we buy it locally and then sell it to Russia. And that's again, it's not avoiding sanctions, it's just making the process smoothly today. And I think more and more this will happen, that they're going to have consolidation centers in China or in Asia, and I call now China, in Asia with destination Russia.
Absolutely. And you made that good point in I wanted to echo it about Kazakhstan, you know, transiting through Kazakhstan, China to Russia, because, you know, Kazakhstan's economic numbers and business numbers look quite good. And I think that's because, you know, the oil price is good, people want to do more there, that's a factor. But I think another factor is definitely the transiting, legal transiting, and maybe occasionally some dodgy transiting as well is impacting on that, for sure. Just moving around the world a bit, you said at the start you're 50% Russia, 10% Ukraine, and then you mentioned Europe and everything else. How's Central Europe? And I confess my ignorance on this, Stefan. Turkey. How much do you do in Turkey, and do you see that as an important, geographically it's a no-brainer. How do you see that?
I think I've been several times in Turkey, not only for a holiday, but also for business. And we had different plans to start up in Turkey, but you noticed logistics in Turkey is quite developed, like Poland. If we step in as logistics company, it's a tough competition. And Turkey is well developed. So still today, we decided we have now more business from Turkey to Russia, and you know the reason why. We work with good partners. We decided not to start our own business for the time being. Things can change, of course. And if you look at our map with our locations, to give an example, if you look our map in CIS, if we have, I don't know, 10 locations, seven are in the same city where there's a tobacco factory. So we follow the customer. So if a customer today asks us to go to Turkey, for sure we will look at it and we will analyze it, and maybe we'll do it. But just to start and to develop the business, we see we are not strong enough, or there is too much developed competition already.
Right. Thank you. We're not finishing yet. We've got a few minutes, and we like to do about 45. You mentioned staff and people at the start, and how some reductions were necessary. How I've got many HR stories. How are they performing, and what's the mood? And are you using them for projects in other countries, or is that maybe with your business? Actually, you don't need to do that. That's one thing. And then we can finish off with some talks about inflation and the labour market. But just at the moment, what's the mood among staff?
I remember 2014. We had the first crisis, and at that moment we created some scenarios. And it was also a big part of the scenarios linked to exchange rate. What's happened to exchange rate and what we're going to do. And at that moment we also took some actions. We closed the kitchen. And I was very afraid. I said, I need to present this to the people here in Russia. At that moment I was manager for Russia. But my HR said, you should tell that it's a tough time. And we as Ahlers, but also as a country, Russia, we are fighting against something outside Russia. And staff was very understandable. They said, we had many crises, we survived. And also this time, first of all, they were very happy we stayed in Russia. And that was the first message. The second message, that they were very happy that we didn't say they are bad people. Because a lot of comments where Russians are bad people, why is it, I have nothing to do with this. And then third, we need to do some reductions. Also, we need some salary, temporarily, some cutting. Temporarily, this is the time, we do it one time, not longer. But it's in a global plan to survive and to become stronger afterwards. And it was very well accepted. Only today I noticed that the labor market, there is no shortage there is no shortage of people. So yes. I was anticipating that companies will close, people will fall without a job, and the labor market will be a higher level of unemployment. So our people now today are quite open to have another job. It's not so difficult. Okay, they are loyal to our company. We made a clear communication. We're now increasing back the salaries. We're going to apply the inflation. But the labor market, and that's also one of your questions, I don't know anymore. I don't know. The blue collars, COVID, everybody was doing e-commerce. So all the warehouse workers, in our case, we became a courier, delivering the goods around. We need to increase, I think, 2 times 10% in 1 year, besides inflation for the salaries. And I remember in your webinars, you also mentioned this. it was not only for our case, it was for everybody the case. IT people last year the same. They all went to the big banks and in IT investments. Accountants, finance people, still a challenge. Logistics people, still a challenge. So the labor market is still it's still an employee market.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid to make predictions, but I'm afraid for next year it will change, because I think that many companies now became local and they were sold to the local management, and will start to optimize. Yeah. And they will say, okay, I don't have this corporate thing and I need to start optimizing, so I will reducing costs. Like I said, consumer spending, I think, will reduce during the next months, years. So volumes will go down. So I'm expecting that the labor market will calm down a bit, but still people are expecting at least inflation in their salary increase. And inflation is high. Mm-hmm. And that's a bit, I know a lot of companies who increased the prices in March in the shops because of the exchange rate, but they never increased it again. Mm-hmm. They kept the same price level. So, but like, I think next year will be a year. And I think it's something you also mentioned, I get from your webinars, promotions is very important in Russia, in the retail, and it will come back even more.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Stefan. Just a quick word from me, commentary, please agree, disagree, modify. Officially inflation, well, we all expected, like the ruble, we all expected massive inflation after the 25th of February. And that happened a little bit, but it didn't go to 30-40, it went to 20-25 briefly. And then with the strong interest rate temporarily and the strong ruble, it's come down. It's running at mid-teens now, 14, 15, 16. We think the average for this year, Stefan, will be, started lower but higher. I think the average could be about 14, 15 average. And the consensus is that it's going to trend down a little bit the next months. But by Christmas, it could be just the December figure could be, as low as 9%. And then for your calculations, it's a tricky one though, the average inflation could be, 7, 8 next year. This is a consensus view. So we might start at about 9. Some people say Christmas of 23, the end of 23, we could be down to 4, 5. So that would give you an average of, as I say, 7, 8. Official numbers, of course, but the Russian official inflation numbers are as good as anyone else, with errors and so on. Inflation expectations have come down to 10, 11, 12, and they're always higher than, if inflation is going to be 7, 8, expectations are 10, 11. That's normal. But I think certainly you're right. Most of the companies I work with, they were very tight with salaries in 22 or reductions, obviously. But now I think you're right. There's a need requirement to at least do inflation for the budget of 23. I'm sorry to be a bit mixed again, as I was with supply chain. I would say that 60% of the managers in the group say the HR market is hot, like you do, and I agree, challenging, which is curious. But 30%, it must be different sectors, different jobs, and so forth. They're saying it's not so difficult. There are vacancies, people on the market, and so forth. As you know, we're also seeing the localization of staff. Many expatriates have left, GMs and so forth, and CFOs. So that's another factor as well. And I agree with you, changing tack, definitely consumer demand, promotions. So for our clients and your own business budgeting, one needs to be thoughtful and cautious for 23. I'm saying to our group members, and you've heard me, Stefan, you survive 22, you get to Christmas 22 and you think, bonanza, hallelujah, we did it. Happy days ahead. And no, it's going to be 23. I think it's going to be a tough slog. But if you can survive 22, then, you know, I think 50–60% of companies plus can run a viable business in Russia. It'll be different and maybe smaller. Stefan, it's been great. Anything we've left off that you'd like to bring up, please?
Maybe a small comment on the labor market.
Yeah.
I see one kind of category of people which are today very easy to find. For us, we are a Western company, and we see a lot of candidates who were working for a Western company, Russians, who now became a local company, but they said, I really prefer to work for an international company, and they look for a new job, and there are less and less international companies active. So salespeople, management, there today it's easy to find people because they are really looking for a Western company, and even there are a lot of expats who don't want to leave.
Yes,
they are pushed out, and they said, I want to stay in Russia. So that's the only, let's say, from my experience, where I see that there is more supply than demand, to put it in logistics terms also. So there I see really a change, and with inflation and with exchange rate, I always count on your reports to make my predictions for the future. And also when I see the survey about salary increase, I notice as most of the time we as a company are in line with the majority, like a little bit below inflation, on inflation. And I think today we will be in line with inflation.
Right. We're just drafting our next survey for Russia CE, Stefan. We'll send it out soon for a question, and then we'll be able to publish it early September, because, you know, the budget cycle for 23. By the way, I was yesterday in Brno with a group member, a business-to-business company, and the poor things, they were doing their first draft budget for 23, August 10th. So good luck. But we'll have that benchmarking ready. And I agree with you, Stefan. I think we'll be close to inflation next year. Will be the benchmark.
So
but and also
your report.
Thank you. Yeah, really, what you say about the Russians who want to work for Western companies, it's a good little point. It's not a little point, but it's a good point. And really, I do know the thing about the expatriates. There are a group of them, you're absolutely right. Many have left, many have been obliged to leave, but some, you're right, they've left their companies and they're on the market. Of course, many of them want to be GMs, but I also think probably some of them, you know, those GMs, they're modifying their expectations. So I might have to come down one level also if I want to stay. So it's a compromise.
Correct.
Stefan, it's a pleasure working with you and your team. And
thanks a lot.
I look forward to the next time and presenting, hopefully privately to you and your colleagues and clients online and in Europe. And fingers crossed for all of us. And all our friends and colleagues in Ukraine and Russia. Thank you very much, Stefan.
And hope to see you offline soon again in Moscow.
Very much, very much.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Danny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.